Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pal's Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
For this episode, we're going to review Mission Impossible Fallout, but here's just a fair warning. There's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. In this movie, Ethan Hunt, along with his IMF team, race against the time after a mission goes wrong to save the world. So, Touly, what did you think of this movie?
So, first off, I want to say that this is actually my first Mission Impossible movie. It might be extremely surprising that it is, given the number of Mission Impossible movies that already existed before this one. And so my evaluation for this movie is not based on any of the prior movies. It's just based strictly on this movie alone. I think in a lot of ways it worked to my benefit in me liking the movie, because I feel like if most of the movies prior to this one, follow the same plot line or the same kind of theme, in which I feel like Ethan Hunt, he escaped death so many times, and it was just due to, I guess for the lack of word, due to luck. And I mean, and like I said, for it being my first Mission Impossible movie, I can overlook that, because it sort of reminded me of a video game that I play, and this particular character in that video game, and it happens to be like a video game series that I like a lot, and it reminded me of Naughty Dog's Uncharted series.
Yep.
Because in that video game series, the main character, the main protagonist, Nathan Drake, he also finds himself in these situations that sometimes you think he wouldn't be able to survive or get out of, but due to some sheer luck, he always finds himself, skating by. So in a way, I kind of related Ethan Hunt to Nathan Drake. And because of that, I sort of appreciated the film for what it is. Now, back to what I said, if this is the common theme, though, from like prior Mission Impossible movies, then if I were to watch this, given those prior, that prior knowledge, I would probably be a little more harsh on the film, because the way they were advertising this film, from me going to theaters this year alone, I noticed that this particular Mission Impossible Fallout film was actually being advertised a lot. Like, it was almost being previewed at every single movie that I was attending. So I figured, just from the vibe I was getting, it felt like a very dark Mission Impossible. I had that feeling that it was one of those films, kind of like The Bourne Supremacy, where you see maybe the Ethan Hunt or the main character kind of going back on or going rogue. Like, maybe he has reached a point where he broke because they're making him do something that is against his ways of looking at life or what have you. So I sort of got that vibe that this film was going to turn dark, but due to the humorous way that Ethan Hunt always found his way out of these situations, and the other type, and of course the other comedy from the other characters and the other cast as well, it wasn't as dark as I thought it would be, but I think it was a nice balance. It was very action packed. That aspect of the film really took me off guard, because like the ending sequence where the bombs were supposed to, or not the bombs, but the nuclear warheads or whatever were supposed to go off in like a 15-minute time span. The sequence lasted for more than 15 minutes alone. So there were some inconsistencies, but at the same time, it was just action-packed scene after action-packed scene, particularly also when they were being chased around as they were going after Solomon Lane, so I guess it was Ethan Hunt who was able to capture him in a prior film or something. So there was this chase to acquire him, and then there was this other double agent that was chasing Ethan Hunt or Solomon Lane as well, and that sequence lasted for a very long time as well. So it was just action pack after action pack with with some decent comedy scene in there, not over the top like you would see maybe like in some Marvel films and stuff. It was just barely enough for me to not get annoyed by the jokes or whatever they have you. The twist, it wasn't too surprising. I thought they could have done that. The twist they brought about with Walker, I wish maybe they would have hid that a little bit better, or brought it in a way where that would catch me by surprise. But when they introduced Walker, I already started speculating that this guy is not who he is. So, but overall, I would say I enjoyed the film though. for my first Mission Impossible movie.
Well, I totally agree with you. And knowing that it's your first Mission Impossible, you kind of hit the nail on the head. But the only thing is that when you saw this trailer, you said you would think it was going to be a little dark. He was going to go rogue. That's actually the last movie, so you're not off. Which it's kind of interesting for me to see it from an outside perspective. You know that you kind of actually got that from this trailer, and it's and you see kind of a little history before, but you never seen the other films. So in that sense, you're very keen to details. So, but the other thing is, you said it was action after action after action, and just I would say, just the right amount of humor, and not just from Simon Pegg because he's a comedian, but actually from Tom Cruise. And everything he does, like you said, reminds me of Drake from the game. And yeah, this is basically just that. He's always getting by, cut it really close to the last second. Even when at the end, like, how close did we come? Close. He's like, the usual. He's like, oh, the usual. In that sense, it's like you said, it's always luck or it's coming down to the last second. Based on this, if there's another Mission Impossible movie that is going to come out later, would you give it a try? Would you go and see it?
Most likely I would go and see it, but then now, because I have been exposed to a Mission Impossible movie and sort of have gone a formula as to how they handle their characters, the type of story they tell, I am going to be a little more harsh in terms of my criticism of it. I would expect it to be different in some retrospect. Like, don't follow the same formula. Give me a twist that I wouldn't see coming, or something like that. Don't follow the same outline as in this prior movie. I mean, if it does, then of course I'm probably going to give it a lower score, but I could imagine myself actually go and watch another Mission Impossible movie after watching Fallout.
Okay, so with that said, I'm just going to tell the fans out there that if you go see the movie, and Tom Cruise has said this, that if this movie does well, they will make other Mission Impossible movies. So if this movie knocks it out of the ballpark in the box office, we should expect more Mission Impossible movies. Now, my next question: would you go and see the previous films of Mission Impossible?
So most likely I will, but I think I'll be kind of selective though. I'm not sure if I want to start like right at the beginning. I probably just want to watch films that ties into Fallout in retrospect to some of the characters that were, for this movie being my first Mission Impossible film, just to get a little more information or understand where some of these characters were, where they stood in prior films relative to this one. For example, the wife of Ethan Hunt, just to get a little more about her. I'm not so sure how much of a role she played in prior Mission Impossible films, but she did play in terms of, from an emotional standpoint, she did have an impact on Ethan Hunt. So I just kind of want to see where that relationship was prior before they went their separate ways. Obviously, they still care about each other. I got at least that much from watching Fallout. And then there's the other lady in this film, played by Rebecca Ferguson, Elsa. So there's that going on with Ethan Hunt too, because in this film, when she came on screen, Ethan Hunt just said to Walker she was just a prior, she was an acquaintance or something. So yeah, just hearing Ethan Hunt refer to Elsa in that retrospect doesn't give me a whole lot of information, so I would like to know more about Elsa. And to be quite honest, I'm more fascinated about Elsa than the wife,
yes.
because Elsa was more involved in what Ethan was trying to accomplish in this film. So I feel like she probably had a bigger role in the action sequence, or how something was prevented from happening that would cause havoc in the world or whatever. So definitely that she is one of the characters who I would like to know a bit more. And of course, the other two comrades of Ethan Hunt, played by Simon Pegg and by Ving Rhames. So yeah, just wanted to know more about these comrades, really. That's kind of why I would want to go back and watch the Mission Impossible films. Not necessarily just to know what happened in each of the films. It's more about getting to know more about these characters.
Yeah. I mean, just to let you know, Simon Pegg joined the series, I want to say 3 movies ago. There's actually a total of 6 movies in the series. When they talk about the wife, that's probably movie 1. Like I've said, and I think I told you, To me, it's just a cliche. The character Ethan Hunt, like he cared so much about his, his wife that he had to let her go, distance himself from her. They told her that he was dead so she could move on. Later on in another movie, he shows up and she finds out that he's alive because she's always in danger. So she's kind of the damsel in distress, but Ethan Hunt has to be far away. To me, that seems like a total cliche, and I can do without that. Like you said, I would be more interested if they developed the relationship between Ethan and Elsa. So in that sense, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm not really fond of the wife either. So
Yeah.
so like you said, the last action scene with the bomb, timer said 15 minutes, but I can guarantee you it was way over 20 minutes. So moving on, what scenes did you enjoy of the movie, and what scenes actually you could have been like, I could have done without?
So I think one of the first scenes that I really enjoyed from this film was when they set up the guy who was involved with building the bombs, where they set up the hospital room, and they had the guy on CNN, Wolf Blitzer, of course, being portrayed by, at the time, by one of his, like, Ethan Hunt's comrade, Benji. I mean, of course, he does this a couple of times throughout the film where he puts on the mask and plays another role. But yeah, for them to be able to do that and get information out of him, that was pretty nice. I like how they handled that. Good Hollywood acting by Ethan Hunt as well, for being distraught or angered because he made it seem like he was getting taken advantage of by that guy who was involved in the creations of the weapons. So that was definitely one of the things that I loved a lot. Another scene, although it wasn't as long or as in-depth, I thought it had a lot of emotion built into it, a lot of serious tension built into it. And it relates to how, again, back to Ethan's character, where they keep saying he's the type of guy who would rather rescue one person over a town's worth. So it was when the crew was able to secure Solomon Lane, and it was when they opened the set of doors or whatever, and they were about to get into this car, they see a police woman on the other side, and they were just staring at each other, and the police woman was just is quite shocked, didn't know quite what to do or what to make of the situation. As Ethan is trying to convince this police woman to just leave for her own well-being, because of how long the scene progressed, how she was in leaving, how she was probably going to be a resistance. She got shot by one of the individuals who Ethan Hunt was working for, and because of this, Ethan Hunt is immediately put in a situation where, again, he's choosing to save one person, one life over the many, ends up shooting the crew that shows up that he's working for, just so that he could save this police woman who was just doing her job, really. Yeah, that scene was extremely intense. I thought that was probably one of the few scenes in the movie that I felt I came to realize or know more about Ethan Hunt as a character of the Mission Impossible franchise. And I think if I were to mention one more scene, it's when they tricked Walker. When they thought that Walker got the upper hand, and they took the real Solomon Lane away and had, again, one of the sidekick play him by putting on the mask. I thought that was really well done. And also, it was a nice touch that they had... I'm going to ask you, Sal, this because I'm not sure, but was Alec Baldwin, was he part of the series before this movie, or was this his first appearance?
This is his second movie.
Okay. So, yeah, so seeing him there too, and I thought he did a great job, and for him to play this character that also was in this masterful, well, I wouldn't call it masterful, but it was a great way to get Walker to commit and, find out, who he really was and stuff like that. So I would say like those three scenes might be my favorites, or at least they were the ones that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, I have to totally agree on the scenes, especially the one with the female officer. I liked how they opened up with kind of humor. The doors open and everybody's like stunned. And they look at Solomon, who has the hood over his head, and they're just like, this is kind of awkward. And then she's like, doesn't know what to make of it. Then Ethan just basically goes like, guys, get in the car. And then we see Simon Pegg, who plays Benji, he's like, Benji, get in the car, and he's like, okay. So he's walking. The girl says, stop in French. So Benji's like hesitant, like, should I or should I listen to Ethan? So it's that whole play, and the same thing you said. This gives us a more in-depth look into what makes Ethan Hunt Ethan Hunt. So he cares about, innocent people, and he'll just go out of his way to save one, even if it means risking his own life. So this is the kind of character, and I think, like you said, we can relate it to video games. This is what heroes in video games do. They go out of their way to save one person or to save something, even if it means their lives. Those scenes were great. The other thing I want to point out is Tom Cruise and Henry Cavill did all their stunts, except Henry Cavill did not do his Halo jump. Tom Cruise did. He actually trained for a whole year to do that Halo jump. And I was amazed, because I'm like, you never hear about an actor, doing his own stunts, because they're always thinking about like, oh, what if I break my leg or break this and everything. Tom Cruise actually broke his ankle in this movie when he was jumping almost at the end from one roof to another. In that scene, when you see him land on the roof and then he limps, that's actually when he broke his ankle. So they kept that scene in there, and this just gives you credit to Tom Cruise that, he'll do anything to make a movie successful, even if it means, injuring himself. And there's other movies, Mission Impossible, where he has broken ribs. And in every single Mission Impossible, they try to market it as Tom Cruise is doing his own stunts. And to me, that gives another validity to Mission Impossible, the series, that, we can see Tom Cruise playing a character, but at the same time, we know that when we see action scenes, it's him. Especially when he was running through the rooftops, that's him. And the winds were pretty high. The same thing when he's riding in the motorcycle through Paris, that's him without a helmet. He's doing these things, putting himself out there, and it's basically, I don't know if it's cliche, but I would say Ethan Hunt is kind of truly Tom Cruise. So you can't distinguish ones without basically saying like, oh yeah, Tom Cruise, he's just playing Ethan Hunt. No, he is Ethan Hunt by risking his own life in filming the movies. So one more scene I want to talk about is the scene with Elsa chasing Tom Cruise through Paris, when Tom Cruise is in the car with Solomon Lane and she's trying to shoot him and she's on a motorcycle. The time where she goes in through the middle of some pillars and the camera follows her, that cinematic shot, I thought it was really amazing how we see the pillars flash by and the sound they make, and she's in frame. And it was just, to me, it was kind of in a sense, a beautiful scene how they shot it. It wasn't nothing that stood out like in the action sequence, but it was just the way they framed it and everything. It just made me seem like, it gave me this calm feeling in a sense that how they framed it. So to me, it was amazing how they shot it cinematic. So with that said, let's give this movie our final grade. Touly, what did you give this movie?
I would give Fallout a score of 8 out of 10. Again, for being my first Mission Impossible movie, I thought it had a good balance between humor and action. I mean, action scenes were probably a lot more than the humor, but at least the humor, were thrown in there to kind of give you some sort of relief when, you get action scenes after action scenes. And again, they're not too over the top, just the retained comedy that you would probably expect from like a crew who would consider each other family, just joke around with each other. The characters, I think for the most part, you find them, you can appreciate them, particularly Ethan Hunt. Even the villain, Solomon Lane, when he was going through his little rant with Ethan about how he should have killed him or whatever, years ago, or what he said there. I really felt like this guy was like crazy. He was nuts. He was evil. So yeah, I mean, I thought for the most part I loved the characters that were in this film. Again, I wish the twist was less predictable. I think that would probably be my only gripe. But again, for being my first Mission Impossible, love the comedy, love the action scenes, love the countless times that Ethan Hunt avoid disaster. So yeah, overall, 8 out of 10. I think a movie that I would recommend people to go watch it if either. Well, I can't probably say if for people who have watched prior Mission Impossible movies, but if you haven't, go watch this one.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. I also like the character development and how they kept adding to the previous movies, developing the characters, especially Solomon Lane. The way he acted to me gave me this arch nemesis vibe to Ethan Hunt. So he portrayed kind of a little bit of a Joker mixed with the Lex Luthor vibe to me. Like he's the kind of guy who he goes out of his way to make Ethan Hunt suffer, and we saw this, like he was actually willing to die with the bomb going off as long as he saw Ethan Hunt be defeated. So he didn't care of dying. He just wanted to see Ethan Hunt, feel that he couldn't do anything. He was helpless. So in a sense, that character to me really brought it like home, and it was like, wow, this is really like a good movie. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10, and I would recommend this to people who haven't seen the series, and obviously people who are Mission Impossible fans. If you go see it, remember Tom Cruise already said that there's going to be more movies coming soon if this is a successful film. Okay, so before we end this show, I want to take a minute or so to talk about somebody who recently passed away in the YouTube community. This person is one of the persons who influenced me to start this podcast, along with Matt Pat. The person who I'm talking about is Ronnie Oni Edwards. He recently died in July 4th. He died because he committed suicide. He started with his own show called Digressing and Sidequesting. From there, he moved into Game Theorist with Matt Pat, and they became partners, and he edited the films. To me, this person, I've seen both shows, both of their channels. They're people content creators who are amazing. The way they do their thing, they research, and their editing skills are amazing. Can't say a lot about him because I didn't meet him personally, but I used to see him in a convention. I kind of almost got to meet him, but I didn't. I was kind of hesitant to walk up to them. In a sense, if I would go back in time, I would go and tell him, what he did for me, how he inspired me. Really sucks that he committed suicide. He was battling depression for most of his life. According to Matt Pat, he was fighting some demons, and he didn't really elaborate. To people out there who are suffering from depression and find themselves in a vulnerable place that the only way out they see is to commit suicide, don't do it. Remember, there's people who care about you out there. So if you want to do anything, reach out, take a minute or so and call the numbers on screen. It's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's open 24/7. If you don't want to call them, you can actually reach out to them through chat online, and they're there for you. They're people willing to talk to you and listen to you. Don't think that you're alone, because you're never alone. When you have friends, anybody who's there with you would rather have you around than not have you at all. So with that said, rest in peace, Ronnie, and there's going to be links to his channels down below. Thanks, Ronnie, for inspiring me. So with this, we wrap up the Mission Impossible Fallout episode. Next time, we're going to review BlacKkKlansman. So this is a film directed by Spike Lee. And social media is in the description. And remember, keep watching movies.